Okay, let's tackle passage 4. I will tell you going in that this passage does contain an argument. So read it over and see if you can identify the ultimate conclusion, whether it is stated or not. Pause the video, do that, and come back when you're ready. Okay, what do you think? I think that this passage contains a stated ultimate conclusion. So I think that the conclusion, as a matter of fact, is right here. Universities should offer philosophy courses. So that's going to be number 1. That's what this passage is trying to get us to believe. What about the sentence, just think about it? Does that convey a claim? Does that express a claim? Think for a moment, pause the video, come back when you're ready. It does not, right? It's a command sentence. Command sentences can't be true or false. They don't express a claim. If they don't express a claim, they're not a part of the argument. We can ignore it. What about philosophy acquaints students with a variety of ethical systems, and acquaintance with a variety of ethical systems gives people the ability to think about ethical questions? Does that sentence express a claim that is part of the argument? And if so, how many? Should we keep it as one sentence if it's important? Should we divide it into 2 sentences if it's important? Should we divide it into 3 sentences if it's important? Or should we ignore the whole thing? Pause the video, think about that, come back when you're ready. Okay, I think it's important, and I see 2 claims there. I would divide around the and. Dividing around an and is not absolutely forced, like it is with like an expression like therefore or because or in any other inference indicator expression, but it's a really good idea for a reason that we will be seeing. So divide around ands, unless you have a compelling reason not to. So now we have claim 2 and we have claim 3, and for heaven's sake, stop. Don't go reading on and thinking, oh, what else is important? Because we need to chew our food. We can't try to cram too many claims in our head at once or we will get lost. So ask, how are 2 and 3 related to each other? Let's just deal with them. Are they related with an inference arrow, with a plus because they're dependent reasons, or separate? Think about that for a moment. Pause the video, come back when you're ready. Okay, I think they are related with a plus. For one thing, and is an inference eraser. It's not and so. And so's are so's, remember. But ands and equivalent expressions like moreover, furthermore, and buts, and equivalent expressions like however, nevertheless, are generally pluses. It's just generally the way it works. So let's do that. 2 plus 3. And now, because we're adding 2 claims, we should always ask ourselves what follows from that. So take a look at 2 and 3 and ask yourself what would follow from those 2 claims put together. Pause the video, look for it, write it down, find it, right? And come back when you're ready. Okay. No, I said look for it. Is it in the passage? Well, let's see. Philosophy acquaints people. Okay. Philosophy acquaints people with a variety of ethical systems. Acquaintance with a variety of ethical systems gives people the ability to think about ethical questions. So, fine. What do they have in common? Philosophy acquaints students with a variety of ethical systems. Acquaintance with a variety of ethical systems gives people the ability to think about ethical questions. So it looks to me like acquaintance with a variety of ethical systems is what's in common. Acquaints with a variety of ethical systems. Acquaintance with a variety of ethical systems. So if we put the leftover concepts together, what do we have? Philosophy students gives people the ability to think about ethical questions. So I would say philosophy gives students or gives people the ability to think about ethical questions. You see people there, that's fine, instead of students. I don't think it makes much difference. Philosophy gives students the ability to think about ethical questions. Why? Well, because it acquaints them with a variety of ethical systems, and acquaintance with a variety of ethical systems gives people the ability to do that. So that is what follows from 2 and 3. Now, is that stated or not? If it were stated, it would probably be stated right away. So let's read. Ethical questions arise in every line of work. It's not stated next. So it's probably not going to be stated at all. So it is a missing subconclusion. Let us then give it a letter A. Perfect. Now we can continue on. Ethical questions arise in every line of work, so the ability to think about ethical questions is a highly practical skill. What would you do with that sentence? Would you ignore it completely? Would you treat it as one sentence, as one claim? Would you divide it into 2 claims? Would you divide it into 3 claims? Think about that for a moment. Pause the video. Come back when you're ready. Okay, what did you decide? Is there an inference indicator expression there? If you did not divide it, pause the video and hunt for that inference indicator expression because it's there. It is so. That's an inference indicator expression. So I have to divide around that. Ethical questions arise in every line of work. Now here's the question. Should I ask, how is 4 related to the 2, 3 A bit, option 1? Or should I, option 2, represent that so right away? Think about that for a moment. Pause the video, come back when you're ready. Think about that so right away, right? You should. Inference indicator expressions always take precedence. So I want to represent the relationship between 4 and 5. Do that on your own. Pause the video, come back when you're ready. Okay, what do you get? If it is 4, so 5, 4 is a reason to believe 5. I'm going to write it kind of kitty wampus here just because I don't want to prejudice what the relationship is between the 4, 5 bit and the 2, 3 A bit. That's the question. How do you think this thing, the 2, 3 A bit, is related to this thing, the 4, 5 bit? Would they be related with an inference arrow, with a plus, as dependent reasons, or with independent reasons? Pause the video, think about that, come back when you're ready. Okay, I'm thinking probably added, right? So what would be added to what? Let's take a look at the A. Should the A be added to the 4, or should the A be added to the 5? Look at the content. Philosophy gives students the ability to think about ethical questions, says A. Ethical questions arise in every line of work, says 4. Okay, that has something in common, sure. What about 5? Philosophy gives students the ability to think about ethical questions. The ability to think about ethical questions is a highly practical skill. That seems to have something in common too. I think, though, that A has a little bit more in common with one of these claims than the other. Pause the video, see if you can find that. Once you have, come back. Okay, what does A have in common with 4? Well, they're both talking about ethical questions, right? That's something. Philosophy gives students the ability to think about ethical questions. Ethical questions arise in every line of work. Yeah. What does A have in common with 5? philosophy gives students the ability to think about ethical questions. The ability to think about ethical questions is a highly practical skill. A has more in common with 5 than it has in common with 4. So I would add A to 5. So I'm going to just write this over here a little bit so it's slightly nicer. 4 goes down to 5. And I would add the A and the 5. Now, let me just pause here to reflect upon the wisdom of representing that so before we wonder how is 4 related to the 2, 3a bit. Do you see that? If I got locked into thinking, how is 4 related to 2, 3, and a, I'm going to be in a world of hurt because it kind of isn't, at least not directly. 4 isn't related to those things. It's the 5 that's related to those things. By representing that inference first, I'm able to ask myself a more useful question. How is the 4, 5 unit related to the 2, 3a unit? That's why always take a look at the inference indicator first. Okay, good. But now, by now, hopefully, this is almost automatic. Well, it's a little too soon for that, but it will be. As soon as you are adding 2 things, ask what follows. So pause the video, think about what follows from A and 5, and start again when you're ready. Okay, so let's think. A says philosophy gives students the ability to think about ethical questions. And we're adding that to 5, which says the ability to think about ethical questions is a highly practical skill. Well, what follows? Philosophy gives students the ability to think about ethical questions. The ability to think about ethical questions is a highly practical skill. So it looks like what follows is philosophy gives students a highly practical skill. There we go. Now, is that a stated subconclusion or an unstated subconclusion? Well, let's read. Everybody acknowledges that universities should offer courses that give students practical skills. Well, that's a part of the argument, but it's not that subconclusion. So this is a missing subconclusion, and guess what? You can't have more than one. This is the first time we've seen an argument that has more than one missing conclusion, but sure, that can happen. Just like an argument can have more than one regular subconclusion, more than one premise. Good, so this is B. Now we continue to read. Everybody acknowledges that universities should give students practical skills. That is going to be an important claim. 6. And now we ask, how is 6 related to this thing? With an arrow as an inference, with a plus, or separate? Pause the video, think about that, come back when you're ready. What do you think? Added, I'm thinking. Added to what? To B. So B plus 6. And now, as usual, as soon as we're adding things together right at that very moment, before we do anything else, we ask ourselves what follows. Philosophy gives students a highly practical skill. Everybody acknowledges that universities should offer courses that gives practical skills. Now you might see what follows, but here's a little tip. If you ever find it difficult to see what follows from 2 claims, try to think about them in the opposite order. So instead of thinking B plus 6, think 6 plus B. Let's try that. Everybody acknowledges that universities should offer courses that give students practical skills. Philosophy gives students practical skills, so universities should offer philosophy courses, which is 1. That can be a useful trick of just thinking, I'm going to think about them in a different order. It's just a psychological thing. There we go. Ta-da! So what we've done is we've added 2 missing conclusions to make this argument a lot more easy to understand. Very good. See you in passage 5.